This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com. Hello, everyone. Joe, how you doing today?
Hey, doing good. I'm excited. This is one of my most exciting interviews today. I'm pretty stoked to get Jordan Harmon on.
Yeah. And now who's Jordan
Hey guys,
Harmon?
it's good to have you.
Yeah, so Jordan is a set of brothers. He's over the Angel Studios, and Angel Studios is known nowadays for building out The Chosen, but honestly, it's so much more. These guys are actually disrupting the whole Hollywood industry, and that's really what I want to talk about today. How really it's almost like Hollywood, and making movies could become decentralized, which has been something that's been very controlled for my entire lifetime. And now we've got these innovators in the space that are coming in and are just about to shake things up. I mean, it is just on the cutting edge. And so I'm really excited to have you, Jordan.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. And so with that, Jordan, share a little bit about your story of how you came to this idea that, The Chosen film, after making it, we decided let's actually offer it for free. And then how did you take it from that to being such a profitable company and such a profitable movie?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So in the early days, when we started into the original content space, we obviously had done Drive Our Comedy, which was super successful, but we were looking for our first, original series that was more of a narrative type situation. And when we discovered The Chosen, we decided that we felt that the best way to do this was to pull it completely out of the Hollywood system and actually have the crowd be the co-owners with the creators in this process. And so we assisted The Chosen in crowdfunding over $10 million for their production budget. They jumped into production, we got into post-production, then we launched the first 4 episodes. We actually launched them in a very traditional method or that you would see in Hollywood through normal mechanisms. But we kept seeing, and it was okay. It was good. It did okay those first couple months, but it wasn't growing like we needed it to. And we kept seeing this interesting phenomenon on social media that you would have all these people commenting saying, man, I really would love to see this, but I can't afford it. And so we're like, okay, that's frustrating. And then you'd see a bunch of people reply to their comment and say, hey, direct message me and I'll cover your costs. And we had similar experiences in that we wanted to share it with people. I'd give DVDs out, and my brothers would give DVDs out, and you would follow up with people that were that you gave the DVDs to a month or 2 months later, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, I'll get around to it." It's like, oh my gosh, it's like pulling teeth to get people to watch a series about Jesus. And so I remember Jeff. He would invite. He's one of the other co-founders. He would invite people over to his house for dinner and have dinner. And then he would sit down as the activity and just watch The Chosen with them. Like, you can't get out. I'm pinning you down here so you can watch The Chosen experiences. Because the reviews were, so incredible once people actually got into that experience. Anyway, but watching those 2 comment threads of people saying they can't afford it and people saying they want to share it. But, we, from our experience, people we shared it with weren't watching it or weren't ready to watch it yet. There was this epiphany in the team where it was, what if we could connect all the people who can't afford it to all the people who want to share it without them ever meeting? And so that's when we decided to take the very audacious approach of making The Chosen completely free. We created an app for The Chosen, and we made it completely free to the world. And we created what was called the pay it forward model. In other words, someone could watch the content for free, and when they got done watching the content, Dallas would come up on the screen and say, "Hey, if you love this and you want to see more episodes and seasons made, and you want to help this stay free to the world, pay it forward." And it just blew up. It absolutely exploded. It did tens of millions of dollars in the first 12 months of doing that, and The Chosen's now generated well north of $100 million. And so it's one of those situations where it was it was, as entrepreneurs, it was us going through the dilemma of realizing how broken the Hollywood system was by trying to do it the normal paths and routes, and then realizing we're not encumbered by all the same things that Hollywood is. We have the ability to go innovate and figure out a new way to spread this throughout the world. And The Chosen just passed 400 million views. So it's exciting. It's invigorating. And to your point, there's a bunch of other projects coming down the pipeline, but and I'm sure we'll have time to chat about those. But it's one of those things where, it's the thing that's been most surprising about this is I thought that the creators that would be the most excited about our model were the indie creators who never got a chance in Hollywood. And that actually hasn't been the case. There's an allure of Hollywood that they still want to get that big Hollywood deal. Like there's this mentality of like, man, I just really want to get that big Hollywood deal, that big Disney deal or Universal or Netflix, whatever it is. And that allure causes a lot of people to like not take our model or what we're doing very seriously. The people who have become most excited that we've actually signed the most of over the last, year or two, as we've really grown, is creators who have done big deals with Netflix and Disney and different big studios, because they've been in the traditional system and they're like, this is so broken. This is this is not a fun system to be in. And so anyway, but that's kind of the
what did your investors
4-minute clip notes?
Yeah, what did your investors say and your investors think when you went to them and said, hey guys, I know you put a lot of money into making this film. It isn't profitable yet, but I got this great idea. We're going to give it away for free and then invite everybody to, if they want, to pay at the end. What did your investors say with that idea?
So, well, there's actually two separate sets of investors, and this is a good distinguishing factor in our business model. Angel, we actually did a crowd fund, a long time ago, where we have our own set of investors, and they've been thrilled at the progress we've been making. When an individual project actually goes to the crowd, they're actually crowdfunding, and those are their investors. And so they are now, obviously those investors want it to get a good return, but a lot of them just want to see the content made. And so they were excited about any way that could move The Chosen forward and really get it around the world. Investors tend to want to, at least for me, when I invest in something, I first invest in something I believe in, and two, that I think it's viable, right? And so as long as those two things, come together and coincide, then, it's a great investment. And so there's been a lot of people who've just been really excited that Chosen is spreading throughout the world, and that this model is actually working for not just The Chosen, but other pieces of media content as well. So the Chosen investors, I frankly haven't had a good enough tab onto what, how they communicate with their investors individually from The Chosen's perspective. But as far as we can see, the reviews kind of speak for themselves.
Okay. So, but my theory was that, like, was everybody on board with this concept? Like, yeah, let's
make it free. No.
Free.
Yeah, no, even in the company, people were like, what are we doing? Like, this is insane. We shouldn't be going down this path. But the reality is there was, some visionaries who understood the path, and they saw a very clear path. And I'm not going to pretend that I was the spearhead of the pay it forward model. There was a couple other people that really thought it through and came up with that idea. And those, they were right. And it was one of those things where, when you get into a position where you either have to, one of the big problems of startups is they don't know when to pivot and how to pivot. And so they end up just dying. And so when you get into a position where we were at The Chosen, that it was generating revenue, but it wasn't growing like it needed to, we saw the writing on the wall. If we continued down the traditional route that was so encumbered by, windowing and horrible processes and horrible monetization paths, it would have failed. And so with that being said, we just said, okay, cool. We can either continue to stretch out this failure, or we can try to figure out a new way to do this. And so in the end, everybody's really excited about it. But to your point, no one, any new innovative idea, you never have 100% consensus on. Yeah. It's very rare that ever happens.
So Jordan, for
when you really started looking at that pivot and thinking outside the box, trying to think of a creative way to do this, what were some of the marketing, or what were the market indicators that gave you an idea that maybe you can pull this off? Maybe it will actually work to pay it forward? Because there had to be some kind of information out there that gave you the idea that it could work.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the two big things that we looked at was, with any project, we're all about the long game. So for example, when we launched the Tuttle Twins, we've been in testing with the Tuttle Twins for a very long time. And it's been super exciting. Even though we're still figuring out little things here and there, it's been super exciting because the reviews of the Tuttle Twins is so strong. And we saw a similar pattern with the Chosen, in that we said, we've got something here. The reviews are incredible. People love this project. That was the first indicator. If the reviews suck, no matter how much you want, you can make it free 100 times over, but you're not going to get people to move it forward in the content. And then the second big indicator was that we felt that this isn't the first time this has actually happened. And so we can't pretend to be the first movers on this, and that there's two examples of this happening in the past. The first one is actually in the media space, where they didn't know how to monetize it, but they understood that free made it meaningful. And that's It's a Wonderful Life. The film It's a Wonderful Life was a complete box office failure. It's my favorite film of all time. And then in 1974, I believe, it falls in the public domain, and CBS picks it up and they start airing it every Christmas. And It's a Wonderful Life goes from this no name, nothing, to this Frank Capra phenomenon that everybody's just like, man, It's a Wonderful Life. That's my Christmas watching list. And it's an incredible film that just gets more and more rich and beautiful every time as you experience more in life. And so they figured out that, even though they didn't realize they figured it out that when content's exceptionally well done and you make it free, it will spread. It takes life of its own. It just starts moving. But they didn't have the monetization completely figured out. In terms of the monetization side, another industry that had actually done this before us was the gaming industry. The gaming industry is probably, I look at them like 5-6 years ahead of the Hollywood entertainment industry, from the standpoint of the Fortnite and Roblox. They came out with free games. Fortnite's like, we're gonna have the exact same quality as every other game out there, and we're gonna make it free, and we're gonna monetize in other mechanisms. We're gonna have the community want to buy skins or different things inside the video game. And people went, you're crazy. This is in 2016, 2017, right? And then within 3 years, Fortnite's one of the most profitable games in history, and it's blowing everything else out of the water in terms of monthly active users. And so it's one of those things where there was other things that we saw internally that made us go, yeah, this feels like the right decision. But we had seen the writing on the wall in terms of another industry, as well as even stuff inside of the media or entertainment industry and film, that we're like, this is the direction we need to go. So it's been exciting that it's validating that it worked, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation if we went down that path and then we never got to where we are today. But we felt really strongly that it would work.
The reason I'm so stoked about what you are doing and just this conversation is because that, when Uber came out, there were companies that had like $30 million, taxi services, like in New York and all these different big cities around the world. And suddenly they were like obsolete, like very quickly. And it was, and it was basically a taxi company that didn't own any cars. And it was so disruptive to the market. What I love about what you're saying and what you're doing is that you're not just talking about like disrupting like companies that have $30 million, worth of cars. You're talking about companies that have control billions of dollars worth of assets, that hundreds really like, billions. Yeah, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets. And suddenly it's like, you don't need to go get the taxi anywhere. It's way easier to just use your phone to get to it. That same thing is about to happen. And what I'm watching is I'm seeing like the Netflix stock just crash, and these different, the Disney stock crash. And it's like, it's because they're just pumping an ideology into their material, which is really setting you up for just the opportunity of a lifetime, I think, where it's like, people actually want a certain kind of content. They don't want to be force-fed a content they don't want, and you're about to provide it in a really big scale. And so That's really what one of the things I'm
That's a
most
common
excited
thing
about.
that I tell people is, you can almost, and I hate the comparison that a lot of companies will make. They're like, we're the Uber and the Airbnb of this industry, right? But there is a little bit of an element of that resonates in that. Angel Studios is trying to be like Airbnb is connecting the host to the guest. Angel Studios is connecting the creators to their audience and their community in a powerful and succinct way that's never been done before. And so we just want to make that connection as seamless as possible so that people can consume great content. And that's our mission: tell stories that amplify light. And so we're going to continue to do that. And we believe that the crowd, because we're so crowd centric and crowd focused, every one of our projects, our originals, they're required to go to the crowd and crowdfund their production budgets. And so it's one of those things where we assist them in doing that. And that's how we secure distribution rights. But the beauty of that is that the crowd gets to validate and vindicate what they want. And it's not 5 executives in a room saying, this is the story and the narrative that we need to tell.
Yeah, and I should share how that worked too. So to just share from my perspective, as I went on the site and I'm working on 2 different films, and I submitted 2 different film ideas to you guys, and it basically had to put together a torch, which is a short video, about your movie, or basically a scene from your movie. And if you pass their jury, then you get to move on to the next section. And so the first one I submitted didn't pass the jury because it scared a bunch of moms with my son climbing and hanging over eternity. And so we're recutting that film so that Anne is a lot more involved. And so everybody knows that there's a mother there supporting her son too. And then the other one did pass the jury, and we're working on that one too. And so I'm actually really excited about where those are going. But I think there's a lot of other people out there that are in the film industry that don't have those assets. Now, could you tell them a little bit about what happens when somebody passes the jury that you uniquely do to help that creator make their movie and fund their movie?
Yeah, and I think let's step even a further step back and talk about what is the jury. So, every one of our projects, The Chosen, Tuttle Twins, Freelancers, David, we've got tons of projects that we've assisted in their crowdfunding campaigns. And when they finish their crowdfunding campaigns, the investors in all those different projects, they are, if they choose to be, they're part of the angel jury. And the angel jury is this large list of tens of thousands, and we're hoping to build it to hundreds of thousands, if not, millions of people that are investors in every one of Angel's projects. And they're asked 2 questions. Does this story amplify light? So when they see, Joe's torch or whoever's torch, that short film or that pilot episode or whatever it is, they're asked, does this story amplify light? And the second question they're asked is, if this was never made into a film or a series, how would you feel? And as long as they pass those 2 questions, they then move into the process of Angel assisting them in building their community and building their campaign around their crowdfunding campaign, getting their production budgets, and then getting into production. And it's a really beautiful thing because it's the first time in the history of entertainment that the creator has so much control of them getting to the finish line, right? In the past, it's always been there's these gatekeepers, and there still are, but we believe that the wisdom of crowds is the best gatekeeper because they're the people that we're supposed to be appealing to, and they're our viewers, they're the consumers. And so it's one of those situations where the creator, it's all based on their own merit and their ability to create a compelling story the crowd resonates with, and it's a feedback loop. We want creators to get through this process. To Joe's point, he submitted something that didn't get through the jury, but imagine spending a lot of money on that, getting it completely done, and then realizing that you didn't focus enough on the mother's relationship with the child, right? It's one of those things where, if you get that feedback early in the process, you're getting a better product in the end. And so we have extreme belief in the wisdom of crowds, but we also believe that those feedback loops are essential to creating an incredible piece of art.
Yeah. And I was going to say, though, there's a component too where when you make the ads to do the crowdfunding, you loan money for the ads too, right? Is that true?
Yeah. So what we do is we assist with the crowdfunding campaign and building the community and the campaign. And then we also loan, because it takes money to raise money. It's not like people just show up and invest, millions and millions of dollars into our different projects. We create a campaign under the direction of each individual creator, and we give them the best practices, and then we also provide them a loan that will allow them to that we can use that money for paid media to spread their project all over social media and all over different platforms and start garnering that community and that crowd. And then at the end of the crowdfunding campaign, they just pay back the loan. And one of our requirements in our process is that every creator, their project needs to get, for every dollar that's spent in paid media, they need to get at least $5 back in investment at a minimum, because we've got to make sure that they have enough of investment in their project to go carry into production budget. We don't want a situation where some creator is, spending X amount of dollars and they actually only got that much back in investment, or even twice that much. That wouldn't be viable. So but yes, that's between those two mechanisms, assisting and providing a loan that allows the creator to build. We help them build a community. That's how Angel's model works in terms of securing distribution rights to the project.
And if I saw it right, you put up an ad for the show David, which is like basically a David and Goliath, remake, which honestly I can't believe has never been done to the level that you're doing it. And is it true that raised 2.5 million in one day? Is that true?
Yeah. So that one, and that's been the interesting part, is we've been becoming more and more confident in our jury process, because we've seen that the higher the score on the jury, the easier it is for us to help the creator crowdfund their production budgets. And David had one of our highest scores we've ever had. And you're absolutely right. We launched, and within the first 24 hours, it raised over $2.5 million. So it's just one of those things where it's exciting to see the fruits of this idea that was hatched, years and years ago, as it's coming to fruition. And as The Chosen and all of our projects get bigger and bigger, we keep getting more and more submissions from more and more creators, and higher and higher profile creators. And so it's a very exciting time, to your point, to not only be disrupting, but also just providing to the consumers exactly what they want in terms of entertainment value, and at a high production value. We don't want to be a studio that is producing content that may be good values, but is really boring or horrible acting, or, I'm not saying that we won't ever have flops, but the point is that we want to make those as little as possible and reduce those.
Yeah. So Jordan, it seems like there really is a streamline part to this process that really provides a lot of accountability and removes a lot of uncertainty with just having, the jury, and just better information to have you hone in and really know what your target is going forward. Do you feel that this whole system has just created, maybe some stewardship that the big industry just misses? Because I can just see, big Hollywood, they've got their budget and they're going to go spend it how they want. They're going to do what they do, and I can really see there being very little accountability and stewardship compared to what your model is.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is there's really three parts of the process for any project, whether it's in Hollywood or Angel Studios. And that's how you get greenlit, how you get funded, and then how the distribution revenue works out. And all three of those parts of the process are a little bit broken or antiquated inside of Hollywood. And what I mean by that is, not only do they have, like to your point, excessive budgets that they just throw at anything to see what sticks and works. 80% of projects in Hollywood fail right now, which is a really bad number. But on top of that, you're in a situation where the studios, they're charging really large distribution fees, and they're charging, ad overhead fees, and they're charging the fees up and down the line. And then they, between that and the marketing costs, which can be a crazy amounts of marketing. Solo, they spent $250 million on the production budget, which is crazy. But then they spent another $233 million on marketing it, and people still didn't care. But it was one of those things where what's interesting about that is, because the studio is not aligned on how costs work, the creator may have in their agreement that they get some type of back end, but the reality is that back end rarely comes. I mean, Harry Potter, grossed over something $8 billion, I believe, and somehow was a net loss to the studio according to accounting. And so it's just one of those things where you end up in a situation where the creator goes, I'm never going to make any money on the back end of this. So I'm going to hike up my production budgets as much as I can and still get greenlit, because that's the only time I'm ever going to make money. And they're not completely wrong. And the problem is you have a creator who's hiking up their production budgets and a studio who's hiking up their costs. And you end up in a situation where between the two of them, you've got episodes of The Mandalorian costing more than $20 million, right? Which is absolutely absurd. And so it's one of those things where the irony of all this is that when you fix each step of this process and you align the creator with the studio, and the way you end up in a situation where you're getting a better business model, because the way it's currently structured, it would be like a founder of a company going to a VC firm and saying, hey, I want to raise $100 million for this idea. And the VC firm says, whoa, why do you need $100 million? That seems a little crazy. He goes, well, it's because I don't actually think I'm going to make any money on this. So I'm going to earn money from my seed round. Like, no investor is going to go, no, let me hand you over $100 million. But that's kind of what's happening in the entertainment industry, and that they're just making money on their seed round, and it's causing inflated budgets. And so you end up in a situation where Angel said, okay, let's look at this and say, what doesn't need to be here? And so we basically removed all fees and got rid of all the fees across the board. And we said, let's take out our hard costs for distribution, the marketing costs to market your project, distribution costs, the monetization costs, anything in terms of costs with your project, which, ranges in terms of what percent of each dollar that is. And then of what's left, and we don't double charge or pay ourselves across, the line like a lot of studios do. Of what's left after those costs, the creator gets 2/3 and Angel gets 1/3. Now the creator needs to pay back their original investors because they did get that investment from those people. But what ends up happening, to your point, is that the creator feels a fiduciary responsibility, one, to their investors, and two, they know they're going to get a back end. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with creators where they'll say, yeah, we need, $20 million for our production budget. And then I go explain our model to them and they go, we might be able to do it for like 5 or 6, right? and it's because they start realizing if I spend more upfront, I have a lower chance of this one being successful because you've increased the risk profile of the project, and 2, I have very little chance of making future content on this project and making a back end because I have such a high production budget. And they can make the same quality of a project like David. You talked about David, Joe. David, the animated film, is going to be a Moana quality, Pixar quality, Disney quality animated film for 1/4 the budget. And It's because they're scrappy and they're putting together. Now that's still expensive. I mean, it's a $50 million+ budget, but normal studios are going to spend between $150 and $250 million on a production like that. And so this aligns the studio with the creator. We're aligned on costs and they're aligned on production costs, and we can kind of travel together down this path more as a partnership and less as a competitive relationship where you're trying to get your own.
Wow. And then the way I understand it too, is Angel's take is only 5%, right? I mean, that's your ownership of each project.
So you're talking about the Angel funding side. So Angel funding is a separate entity that helps with the crowd, the portal. Their job is to ensure SEC compliance on the portal side when someone's crowdfunding. They take 5%. We don't actually have a fee. And what we do is once we actually go from, they crowdfund their project, they take most of the crowdfunding dollars minus the 5%, and they use that for the production budgets. They create their show or their film. And then when they actually get into distribution, when the revenue dollars start coming in from merchandising, pay it forwards, NFTs, and whatever it may be, licensing, that revenue goes in and it pays all the costs first, hard costs. And then after costs, it's 2/3 to the creator and 1/3 to Angel. So it's you're looking at a 66.7% to the creator and 33.3% to Angel. But again, these are after costs. 33%.
And the costs are to the investors, right?
The costs are going to be your marketing costs to
Got
get
it.
new eyeballs. The costs are going to be your distribution costs for servers, your, whatever costs in terms of merchandising and the product. Those are the costs that you're dealing with. When the creator, makes money from their 66.7% after cost, they'll then take a percent of their money, and they'll give that back to their investor. That's where the investor gets paid back.
And then with the NFT idea, like, do you have concepts like with David where you want to give the content away for free and then find ways to make money on the back end? What is the plan for that?
Yeah, so we don't want to ever like remove any type of monetization opportunity. So, like Christmas with the Chosen, we launched that in theaters, in Fathom, broke every record that they've ever had. Did, I believe, over $15 million in box office through a Fathom event, which was absurd. But we look at every model that the traditional Hollywood's already had in place as totally fair game. Like, we're going to move into, with David, doing theatrical and pursuing what those look like. But then once theatrical's over, we have our models, which are completely unique in that, like you said, we can make it free to the world, get as many eyeballs on it as possible. And then we view NFTs as a way for the crowd to have further ownership in the project. And the NFTs are a technology, for those who aren't aware, that allows for the digital ownership, proof of digital ownership. Unlike a GIF or an image that you can just copy and paste, an NFT sits on a blockchain, and it's still that same image, but it shows that the original owner minted it on the blockchain, and you can prove that you have the original NFT because of that blockchain technology.
Wow.
And so we look at NFTs as a good story to tell that will help people understand the value of NFTs. Is Walt Disney, back in the early days, he actually, they had warehouses full of celluloids, Disney celluloids. And celluloids are basically the original frames that they use to create the animated features. And the Walt Disney Company's like, we got to get rid of these. They're just taking up space. And Walt Disney's like, no. And he takes them all and he starts selling these one by one in Disneyland in California to people for, $10 a pop or $8, something like that. And adjusted for inflation, it's like $100 in today's money. And so he starts selling these things, and he sells them all. And then, decades and decades pass, and these frames have started popping up all over the internet, and they're ranging in value from $2,000 up to $80-something thousand because they're the original frames from the Disney animated films.
Wow.
And they're just people. We own one. We have one in the office. It's a beautiful frame of the 7 dwarves, and we love it. And so NFTs allow us to do that, but with the digital content. And that with the Tuttle Twins, for example, we've launched some NFT sales where people can go to angel.com/NFT, and they can actually go and buy a pack of NFTs from the Tuttle Twins TV series, and it's random, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 10 frames, whatever they buy, and they can own those frames. And when someone in the future is watching that content on their TV and they click pause, it pops up and it says, Joe Baker owns this frame. Would you like to buy it from him? Make an offer. And they're like, I love this frame. I absolutely want to make an offer and buy this frame from him. And so these NFTs, the more we get viewership and eyeballs on each one of our pieces of IP, the value of all those NFTs increase, because that's exactly how supply and demand work, is that there's a lot of demand. People want to see it. They want to own a piece of the art. They want to own a piece of the story, and NFTs make that possible.
What will it cost for that first NFT of the Tuttle Twins? Like, what are you gonna charge for those?
I think right now they've already been charging. Let me actually just pull it up and look. I'm pretty sure right now they're charging for a 3-pack or a 2-pack $90. So it's about $45 per frame is what you end up at for that particular.
Awesome.
I own a fair share of frames myself, but it's been really fun to see people's response to this, because people love owning a piece of this and the art and the content. But it doesn't just allow you to own frames. It funds future seasons of the TV series. It allows other kids to watch the Tuttle Twins for free. And one of the things that we've calculated is every time you buy an NFT, we're able to share the Tuttle Twins through paid media and efforts to another 10 kids. And so it's very, very exciting to contemplate that for any type of IP. If someone's passionate about a sitcom or whatever it is, like I want more episodes, I'm gonna, pay it forward, get an NFT that could increase in value going down the road. But on top of that, I get more of the content I love.
Share the
It's not
same
about getting rich. It's not about getting rich. It's about owning a piece of the content that you love and allowing the content to continue, the creators to continue to create incredible content. And then there's a chance that you could have some upside.
Share a little bit about how you did that with the Chosen, and you invited, the Feeding the 5,000 to come and be in the film, because I think that was really a revolutionary concept for me too.
Yeah. So we there was the Sermon on the Mount that we were preparing for, and we had tons of requests from the community, and people were just like, "Man, we would love to be extras on The Chosen." And we said, the Sermon on the Mount's a good opportunity for us to do that, but the problem is we can't just accept everybody. Like, there's just too many fans, and we only need so many people. So we got to qualify these people somehow. So we decided to, if you wanted to be an extra on the Chosen, we were happy to make that possible. But it was going to be a lot of investment on their part, from the standpoint of they had to pay it forward $1,000. They had to buy their own plane tickets, their own hotels, and pay for their own COVID tests, and pay for their own wardrobe. And so we were trying to just figure out how to reduce the amount of people who would end up being extras, so we didn't end up getting bombarded. And we were bombarded anyway. So we thought, we'll get some extras from the community, and then we'll pay for a bunch of extras so that we can, fill in the rest of the spots. Well, we didn't really need to pay for many extras because it just filled up. And then we launched the Feeding of the 5,000, and the same thing, Dallas did a live stream, he announced it. And within 24 hours, there was, millions of dollars of people who had paid it forward because they wanted to be a part of The Chosen and be an extra on that. And so there's a power in community. There's a power in the community feeling like they have one purpose and moving things forward. And we call it single purpose communities. These communities have one purpose, and that's to move The Chosen forward, or to move the Tuttle Twins forward. They want to see more comedy from freelancers, or whatever it is. They have that purpose together, and they're pushing that content forward in a passionate way. And so when they pay money for the project, they'd love to. Whereas with Netflix, it's like you look at your Netflix subscription every month and you're like, oh man, how much am I using this, right? Whereas we want it to be, instead of extracting value first, let's provide incredible content. And then for those who think it's worth the value that we're giving, there'll be ways to monetarily pay and allow the project to continue and succeed.
So if there's an entrepreneur out there that has a creative idea to, so for them, let me know if I say this right, they can literally go out there now, get a script written and cut a part of it out to say, we're going to develop just this torch, and get some local actors, maybe instead of spending $5 million on the film, they just spend 100,000 or something like that, 150,000 developing out that torch.
I've seen people develop torches for 10 grand.
All right, 10 grand.
Just,
right?
They bootstrap. I'm not saying that's going to actually happen. I'm just saying it ranges. We've seen from 10, grand. Well, actually, we saw a $500 short film. The Shift. It was a $500 short film, and that's now raised. It's gonna be a $6 million production budget, and it's incredible that they've been able to build that community and get people really excited about it.
And so talk to them. If you just imagine you've got listeners out there that are entrepreneurs that want to build a brand or want to the company, but they got a creative idea to make a film. What should they do? What are the steps? Tell it in your own words.
Yeah. So we want the creators to show their storytelling chops, and that's why we require the torch. And so you submit that torch to angel.com/create. And it's a very simple process. You go through that jury within 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to have your results, and we're going to send sophisticated and comprehensive feedback as to what can change, what can be modified, how you rated it, where people loved it, where people didn't like it. And Joe's gone through this experience. And it's one of those things where it allows you to get that feedback loop, but also allows you, if you get through that jury, to continue on to potentially become an Angel Original. And so it's one of those things where I always tell creators, if you've got that idea that keeps you up at night, that you're going to think about for the rest of your life, that's the story you should probably tell, and just tell it in a really, really compelling way.
Excellent.
Wow.
Well, hey,
well, with that, this has been a great show.
Yeah, this has been good, Jordan. We appreciate you being on the program.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Hey, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast.